Three, two, one, zero, and liftoff.
Welcome to Mission Control, Peralta Design's podcast on all things branding and digital marketing. Since 2009, Peralta Design has launched hundreds of brands with award-winning identities and websites. Join our hosts Ramon and Jorge as they use decades of combined experience to tackle topics with past clients, industry partners, and the rest of the PD crew. At Peralta Design, we launch brands. But for now, let's launch right into this episode of Mission Control.
All right, welcome everybody. This is Ramon Peralta with Peralta Design, and we're here on Mission Control, Peralta Design's podcast on everything branding, marketing, digital, and tech. And I've got a very, very special guest here on the show today that I'm super excited about. He's a blast from the past. He's somebody that we used to chum it up back in the day when we were wearing the inventor hats back in the Walker Digital days and those crazy days that made us who we are today. And now he's a loving dad and husband. I mean, the guy cleaned up pretty nice. And
I try, man. I try.
He's a respectable human being and just a brilliant guy, a really, really good guy on all different levels. So I just want to introduce my dear friend and digital mastermind, Rob Tedesco.
What an introduction. Thanks, Ramon, man. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. I'm so excited we're actually finally doing this. Tell us a little bit about how you got here, because you were recently at Subway. We go back many moons. How did this all? You come from a very smart family. I love you, your brothers, everybody around you guys. I don't know what your parents put in the cereal, but it was like, I don't know, like extra brains juice or something. I mean, you guys are all like super smart.
Yeah, you don't want to come to Thanksgiving though, because it gets really nerdy and boring. Listen, man, I appreciate that, and I find myself increasingly nostalgic for the days of Walker and hanging out with you and the rest of the crew. I also I've been working with my brothers in different capacities going back to then too. So, listen, I got my start at Priceline, right? Mm. So right close to the mothership at Walker Digital, and then spent 5 years there with you. Mm-hmm. Just kind of inventing the future of consumer tech, right? So got to learn kind of what it's like to think about, behavioral marketing and how to think about technology just in terms of not just in terms of what the tech's capabilities are for pure tech's sake, but really like how it can change behavior and how you can, leverage consumer behavior to make sure that you're making people's lives easier, right? So went from Walker into my own startup, co-founded that with my brother Dan.
I do need to stop you before we can't just gloss over Walker. That I can't let you get off the hook that easy, because when you talk about consumer behavior, the classic line is, "I know what's going on here. You're gonna get there's one sugar and one fat. You can't fool me." So
that's right. I mean,
you got to give me some of that. You got to give me a little bit of that.
I don't know why. I just like baby seals. I do. It's that's the affinity marketing play that works for me. We could rap with some crazy esoteric inside jokes like all day long on that one. That was a fun time. Like I really enjoyed it because I don't know I don't know how often you reflect on those days, but I find myself reflecting on them more and more, and it's like we really were trained to think about problem solving from a way of how can we go with the flow of consumer behavior, right? And it's like, and so much of what my job has become in recent years, working in for the enterprise at Subway, trying to do digital transformation work and stuff, really comes back with all those same founding principles, which is like, people are busy, they have friction in their lives, they have very basic needs that they're trying to accomplish and juggle.
They don't read, right?
They don't read. You know what I mean? Exactly. They're dumb and they're lazy and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, it's true, and it's like, and if you get in their way and try and just put tech for tech's sake in front of them, it's just going to make their life more complicated, and they will reject it. So it's like,
right.
So anyway, I love those days. Have you thought about those days recently?
I do.
How has that come into your DNA at Peralta Design?
Yeah, well, to give everyone context about the baby seal joke and the one sugar, one fat, that was I think that was it was about Venmore and there was one point where we had like two vending machines side by side, and like you put your thumb on it, and then you could, for $1 you could pick one sugar and one fat, and it was just those crazy days. And I mean, it will always be part of my DNA, part of my story. And every time I share about how I started PD, and I can't help but go back to Walker, because like you, I started at Priceline, and we were just joking about this the other day, you and I, when we were saying how, you could go home one night and the idea was in one place, and you come in the next morning and the idea was completely different. And so we were in constant ideation, and that totally comes into play now all the time. And I think as we get deeper into this conversation as to what's happening to retail, you're going to see that a lot of our thinking back then is coming into an advantage for us now.
That's exactly right. We got very comfortable with building sandcastles while the tide was coming in, right? And that is precisely what's happening with retail now. And if you work in transformation and digital, it's really more about change management than it is about technology, right? And that muscle of just being willing to kind of go with the flow and adapt to what's new. So anyway, if you're ready to move on past Walker,
yes, let's go. Let's do it.
Some days I want to go back, So did a mobile app startup with my brother Dan, and I co-founded it, Special Education Technology. Eventually worked with my brother Mike there too. He was a CTO, and that was a lot of fun. I'd like to think we made the world a little bit of a better place. Building apps for kids with autism, for their families, for caregivers. I ran that as CEO for 6-7 years.
And by the way, yeah. I have to pause you there, because I owe you and your family, Carrie, Dan, everybody, a debt of gratitude. I did all those illustrations for Handhold Adaptive.
I remember that.
And that was like right when I got laid off. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, and that was one of my first real gigs during that crazy time in 2008, where everybody, nobody knew what was going to happen.
Right.
And you guys decided to start something.
I remember that. It was a great, they say recessions are a great time to start businesses, and I
Absolutely.
hope your listeners are thinking about that now, right? I mean, it's true. Capital's cheap, rent's cheap, and people are willing to experiment with new ideas. So I remember that time. Thank you for providing us those amazing illustrations. I probably looked at those illustrations 7 billion times, taking screenshots and testing software and doing all that stuff. So those are part of my DNA now too. But right on.
It's on my wall. The Inventors magazine. You guys made the cover of Inventors magazine. It's on my wall in a frame in my office.
Awesome. It's an honor to be there. And it was a great business and a fun time. Working with the family and also just helping people, and so learned a lot. And then Subway called, and it was like, hey, there's this, giant gorilla global consumer brand 15 minutes from your house that's looking for a head of digital product. Are you interested? And it's like, well, of course. Who wouldn't want to do that? At that time in my career, other than a little bit at Priceline, I kind of didn't have that big company digital kind of experience. It was all more kind of small and medium. So I was like, this is perfect. I'd love to do it. So I went there, and it was a crazy 3 years. When you think about transforming Subway had a couple of transformations to make, and I'll keep it quick, but really, number one, Subway's a franchising brand. So all the people in Milford for 50 years, their core competence was in opening franchises, not even running restaurants. That was all the franchisees' job, right? So first you have to pivot from kind of being a franchise-minded organization to being a guest-centric kind of organization, if that makes sense. And then it's once you make that turn, it's how do we figure out how to engage consumers digitally? So what my team did was we built, a new mobile app for ordering ahead, new online ordering website, new rewards program, marketing automation technology to do automated emails and personalized communications, and, getting into kind of the more deeper personalization technology for digital marketing, third-party delivery integrations, of course. So it was a lot of fun. We built a lot of stuff. And now I'm stoked to kind of go look at retail more broadly than just restaurant, and help people figure out how to kind of transform their business and get digital, which, gosh, what a time to be talking about that, right?
Right. And Subway is not just any franchise. I mean, I think at one point they were they had the most locations throughout the world, or I mean,
still do. It's the world's largest restaurant brand. Still is. I mean, I don't know what the store count is now. It's been a few months since I've been there, and obviously the whole world is suffering from COVID. But 44,000 locations globally, 27,000 in North America as of the beginning of this year, and I think McDonald's had 14,000 in North America. So when you're almost twice as big as McDonald's by retail footprint, you're big, right? It's a massive brand. I don't think people even realize that, and it's right around the corner, right?
Right, and I mean, I'm a UB alumni, and your founder, went to UB, DeLuca, correct?
Yeah, there were co-founders, DeLuca and Buck. Yeah, so DeLuca, Buck was the money guy.
Okay.
And DeLuca was the idea guy. Yeah.
Right. Very cool.
Yeah, no, and they went way back, all the way down. It was originally called Pete's, I think. And 44,000 locations later, they really figured out franchising. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's an awesome brand to have under your belt, and I'm sure you did some amazing things there. And now we're in this. In this new world, because we're not going back.
Nope.
And CNBC had a guy today from UBS predicting. Everybody's Nostradamus right now. So he's predicting 100,000 retail stores will close. And we've been talking about this, you wrote this piece. Really, what got my attention was this piece that you wrote, the inevitable piece. Tell us a little bit about that. What motivated you to do that? Because I mean, you're passionate, obviously, about this. So, what do you see happening, and what made you just decide I got to write this piece and put it out there?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I was sitting at home baking cupcakes with my kids every day, and was like, I'd really like to use my brain a little bit during this crisis. So that was like the first thought. And then it was like, I've got a lot to say about this topic, to your point. I mean, and I see kind of COVID as being, it's not so much COVID as a change agent for retail as it is an accelerant of the inevitable change. So the piece I wrote that I published on LinkedIn was, I think, called something like Hastening the Inevitable, right? How digital will transform retail. And, we can touch on a couple of these things, as we go, but really, I mean, slowly, very slowly, over the past couple decades, retail was transitioning towards e-commerce, right? I mean, if you look at, Target.com's capabilities, maybe you've placed an order at Target.com or something like that, right? Just as kind of a big example. And they have a mobile app. And then they launch a rewards program, right? And that's like a big, giant, publicly traded, big box powerhouse, right? But, more and more now, you got mom and pops, small restaurants, small businesses that are trying to find their way to sell online. And there's really, there's phases of that journey, which we could get into. But I think COVID made everyone realize, gosh, first of all, right now, there's no way other than that way to engage people. And I think the real power is once you do start to engage your customers digitally, it empowers you to talk to them digitally, right? And build that relationship and consumer engagement. So all this stuff was going to happen eventually on some timeline. And now that timeline is like ultra compressed.
Right. Because we were moving towards that. I've been saying for years, people will drive away from a gas pump that the swipe doesn't work. They'll rather go to another gas station than like walk inside and talk to the old guy in there, give me 20 on number 2 or whatever. And so you saw this kind of shift happening, but it was happening slowly. Like you said, and this kind of sped things up. And in my industry, I feel like, and I mentioned this to you about the way this COVID exposed companies that weren't really set up the way they were pretending to be. So in my space, I'm competing against a guy who was literally sitting inside a Starbucks, but had this amazing website that looked like he was like on on Madison Avenue, Mad Men. And literally he's farming his projects overseas to Fiverr or to, some teams in other countries. And then I'm trying to compete against this guy. And I've got people on payroll. I've got overhead. I'm paying, sick time and vacation. And then when this all happened, the PPP program comes out and it's payroll protection plan. And then now you have all these people scrambling because they were set up as 1099s. They weren't real companies, so it exposed them. And I wrote a piece about that. But I think in your space, in digital, it exposed companies that were pretending like they had all these mechanisms, but all of a sudden they weren't ready. Am I right? I mean,
it's a great metaphor. I totally, and it's the way that you talk about your business, it gives me some empathy for that space. But just looking at restaurant as like a component of retail, I think there were a lot of restaurateurs out there that said, hey, I've got this iPad or this tablet that Uber Eats or Grubhub or whoever gave me, and I got digital orders coming in that way. Like I'm done with digital, game over, mission over. And now, lo and behold, like, thank God that, they're getting some volume through those channels still. But now every single order that's coming into that restaurant is coming through someone else's business, through someone else's front end, and then being charged a commission into their business. And they don't own that customer, right? So the brands that skip the part where it's like, I need a direct to consumer digital experience, whether it's online ordering or text message or mobile ordering or whatever, now are exposed, to your point, because they don't control that digital customer relationship. They've basically licensed it out to one of their partners, which is going to hurt them in the long run.
Well, it does, and I think that's a great point, because a lot of our customers come to us and they want something customized, but when they hear the price tag, they're like, oh no, I'm just going to use Uber Eats and I'll just link up with that. But the Holy Grail is that when they do that, yes, they are going to a third party and it cuts out development time, but what they're trading, what they're giving up for that is the Holy Grail, which is they don't control that consumer. They don't have any of that data. The third party does. And that, why is that valuable? Why would that be valuable to a small business or a restaurant?
There's really two things about it. So one is kind of the pre-purchase, and then the second is the post-purchase, right? So on the pre-purchase side, like my ability to create an ordering experience that, is built, around the value of my product as I understand it, that sells what I want to sell without being kind of like this standard guardrails experience that everyone else's brand is going through, will get you more sales, right? You'll convert more sales if you can control your experience, design your experience, understand where your users are falling off, redesign your website, all that kind of stuff, right? So that's number one. That's kind of the basic stuff. The real value, and you said it already, Ramon, is customer data, right? Once that person places that order, I mean, you think about your cash business, right, coming into retail. We could have a whole separate podcast about the future of what we're going to do with the underbanked and cash business and contactless payment, and all, because that's like its whole separate nightmare. But someone who's trading cash and then getting product from your retail establishment, you don't have a relationship with that customer, right? When someone orders online, they're giving you their phone number, their email address, or both, and that gives you the ability to, one, talk to them again. Usually you can say, hey, there's a little checkbox of, yes, this brand can send me marketing messages or whatever. It's incredibly powerful, right? And then you're capturing their purchase history. You know what they like. Right. You know how often they buy. And if you know what they like and how often they buy, you can figure out how to, get them to come in a little bit more often, or maybe try some things that they otherwise, wouldn't try, right? So that's the real power, is the data, and to be able to use the data to create those kind of meaningful engagement moments digitally down the line.
And not to mention the commission. Does Uber Eats have like a monopoly on that right now? And is it like 18% or something? Because I've seen like a little meme or whatever where there's a guy that has like, he owns a place and he's got like an invoice for $2,000, but he only kept $400 or something stupid.
I saw another one which was like the price of a burrito, and like you break down the food cost of the burrito and the overhead of the burrito, and by the time you add on the third-party delivery fees, it's like there's no more burrito left, so to speak. So, yeah, I mean the commissions are killer, right? And the economics of third-party delivery are really convoluted by basically a bunch of venture dollars that came into like we see them all, DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats. I mean, we all use different ones, right? But they're all chasing kind of market share right now. And to do that, they're actually subsidizing the delivery fees, right? So like when those venture dollars come out of that market, and it's going to cost you more than $7 to get your food delivered, it will cost you the actual cost of what it costs to pay the driver to drive to you. It's going to become a much less attractive and much less sustainable market. And in any concatenation, it's not really profitable for restaurants, right? Because they're just giving away too much of the margin. to cover their own food costs, right? This is a low margin business to begin with. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Where is this all going? I mean, so you mentioned that some of these companies now that are shutting down, they weren't ready, but they were possibly failing already. Like, tell me this Wingstop. You brought them up, and that got my attention. 65% of their sales were over 65% were digital. What were they doing right, and why were they ready and others weren't?
Well, they bet early. They bet early on owning their own e-commerce channels and designing their own experiences and remarketing to their digital customers, right? And not just the thing about the restaurant business, and there's lessons here for all of retail, is digital isn't just about your app or website. It's about the experience when you pick up. It's about the experience inside the restaurant and tying that all together. And Wingstop has done a tremendous job of that. So showing up, if you ordered online or you're doing curbside pickup, it's going to track you and it's going to automatically know that you're in the parking lot and what space number you're in, and someone's going to bring you out your food right away. So it's this seamless, frictionless experience, right? That was built from the ground up to put the digital ordering guest ahead of the one who comes inside the restaurant looking for dine-in, right? And nobody was thinking that way 5 years ago, except brands like Wingstop. And now look at with COVID, how well positioned they are, because that's the only way people are engaging. And then people will realize, wow, this is really convenient. I should do this more often, So that's one example. Another one might be contactless payment, right? So you have Apple Pay set up on your phone, Ramon?
I don't. I'm about to be 50, so I'm like an old guy now. So,
so I didn't either until I started at Subway and was like, well, they just hired me to be a digital.
I don't trust it. I don't trust these newfangled, devices.
Yeah. So strong recommendation. It's dope, man, because you basically enter your credit card on your phone, right? Okay. And it's saved on your operating system. It's saved on iOS, right? So, and then, it's got Face ID and other ways to get in there. But then because your phone has your credit card, you can just tap at any retailer and pay. Or if you download an app or go to a website from your phone that accepts Apple Pay, you don't have to enter your credit card. You just pay.
Okay.
Right? So enter once, pay anywhere is the model of the future, right? And it's really it's always been convenient from a consumer value proposition perspective. Again, back to that kind of reduction of friction, make life easy for people, right? But now it's safer too, right? When you're out there, you don't want to be fumbling in your wallet for your credit card, handing that over to somebody else, touching
the keypad. We were in Newport this weekend, and it's probably 50% open, but the restaurants and such that were open, you would want to have contactless. I mean, I wasn't set up for it, but after hearing this amazing commercial for it, I'm doing it.
You should. It will make your life easier, right? So that's one way where I think things will change and not go back, right? Like you said it best. It's we're not going backwards. We're not going back to the way things were before this crisis. We're going to invent a new flavor of normal, right? And we throw out that kind of new normal terminology, but that's one of it. It's all these tech. It's all this tech that was it was strong enough for some people, like the early adopters, to adopt a year ago, 6 months ago. But now it's you've seen this big wave of people come on and realize wow, this is actually, not only is it safer, but it's just way more convenient for me, right?
Now, I'm going to throw a curveball because I was going to start wrapping things up, but this is on my heart. I got to ask you this. This all happened before COVID, and you order stuff online through Amazon.
Yeah.
I never in my life have any purpose or reason to go to Kohl's, but for some odd reason, Kohl's has this service where you can return your Amazon purchases at your local Kohl's, and you do this. You just bring in the package, and they handle it. They scan it, and then they give you a voucher, a $25 off voucher for you to buy something in Kohl's. And I'm saying to myself, like we were saying, I see what's going on here. I see what's going on here. But it's what is that? Is that? I mean, are they just trying to survive? Are they flailing? Is it genius? I don't know what to make of it, other than it's obvious why they got me in the store when I normally wouldn't go in.
For sure, man. I mean, it's funny because my wife and I are in the market for a new set of patio chairs and furniture or whatever, and we were going to buy an umbrella for it, and we were looking at buying one on Target, buying one on, I don't know, whatever,
Yeah.
a bunch of different home furnishing sites, and then one on Amazon. I was like, don't buy on Amazon. Returning it's going to be a pain in the whatever, right? So now I know Kohl's is my place, and they want to capture foot traffic, right? I mean,
exactly.
that's the challenge, right? Is like they're in a line of business where they need people in their stores because they don't have enough eyeballs online, right? So that's probably why. But I wish I could give you some more prophetic remark than that. But it does seem like a smart idea.
Yeah, at least they're trying to adapt, and I think that's the key of all this is just evolving, adapting, change management. I think we touched on all that, but before we wrap up, how can people get a hold of you? Where can they find you? It sounds like you're now providing digital consulting services, helping people. Like, what is your ideal client? How can you help someone, and how can they reach you?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm doing digital strategy work, mostly retail transformation work. So, how to get your retail business online, and then if online, like, how do you make sure you're optimizing that, right? So you can grow kind of that engagement and lifetime value with those customers. You can find me on robtedesco.com, really straightforward. And, I'm happy to help do whatever I can, whether it's, local business or whoever. There's very easy things that can be done to even before you start taking online orders. Like there's some really brilliant things people have done. I'll give you one example. IKEA, right? If you Google the IKEA in New Haven, Connecticut, they changed their business listing on Google from IKEA, just IKEA, to IKEA, click and collect pickup now available at this location.
That's their name.
That's their business name. Exactly. Like, it's amazing Google let them fit that many characters in there, right? But they did, and they took advantage of it. And it's
genius.
Like that's step number one is like just make sure people who are looking for you online know that you're selling, right? So there's all sorts of things that can be done, and then once you have that capability to collect those orders, what you do with the customer data is kind of the next big step. So that's the other area where we're advising, retailers, restaurant brands alike. Awesome, man. Well, thanks for joining. I think we're definitely going to have to do a part 2, and we could talk about all these other payment methods and oh man, we should do a roundtable. Like, we should get like a bunch of like ex-Walker folks on and do like a,
Patterson.
Like
Patterson's going to be fun.
We need Mike P on here. That would be awesome. Yeah, I can't even imagine how much fun that would be. So listen, I just wanted to say before we wrap, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
And just congratulations on what you're doing with Peralta Design. I mean, you can see the power of what you guys do building brands, and you do great work. And so it really, truly is an honor and a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, man. Thanks for being on the show. Take care, and go make some brownies, will you? Or cupcakes or something.
Yeah, I'm tired of cupcakes. Maybe I'll write another article after that.
All right, Rob. Thank you, man.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is Ramon Peralta with Peralta Design, and we launch brands. And thank you for joining us on Mission Control. Until next time, take care and be safe.
Thank you for taking this journey with us. To learn more about Peralta Design and our work, go to www.peraltadesign.com and subscribe to keep up with the crew.